as well. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Monica Reyes and welcome to Breaking Truth. So as you know, for those of you that have been joining us, I've been hosting every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. I've been hosting a webinar slash it's turning into like a interview kind of fun experience where, and this, the idea of Breaking Truth started off as my podcast. It's the name of my podcast. And it started off as my own curiosity to life's questions. And so breaking apart, getting to the truth of what this life is. Who are we? Who are we as humans? What is this life? You know? And so I am interviewing and having a conversation with different experts, different people in different fields to make the case, if you will, bringing my legal background in here to really get to the root of different topics. And so today I'm so excited to have Val Silidker. So she is my good friend. She's my colleague. She's also my mentor. For those of you that know, I took that 9-month course at the Psychospiritual Institute. That's Val. She founded this Psychospiritual Institute. I became certified as a psychosynthesis life coach, and it was incredibly life-changing. What I also love about Val is that she's been studying deep ecology for the last 20 years, and she's got so much experience in this field of where we are now, of like, you know, the part of us that's this ecological self, the part of us that's connected to nature, the interdependentness, the interconnectedness of all. And she also brings in the cosmos and the universe, that conversation. So I'm really, really excited to really dig into this today. Before I introduce Val, I wanted to kind of let you all know, whether you're on Zoom or whether you are in Facebook Live, go ahead and post your questions. We'll be having a conversation, and at some point within the kind of 45-minute point, we will be answering them. So if you have anything that you want answered, write it down, and then, or you go ahead and post it in there. And for those of you on Zoom, you can post it in the chat, or you can post it in the question and answer, but we'll get to those. So I wanted to introduce Val, and also right after her introduction, she's going to lead us into this really powerful meditation called the Remembering. And the first time I experienced this meditation was on her Feast for the Soul. So every year she does this amazing gathering of 40 teachers where you take a journey, and I'm sure she's going to do it next year, but I've been doing it. I've been a participant, and it's such an honor. And basically what you do is you sign up and you take this journey of 40 days worth of all these different mindfulness, spiritual teachings. And the very first time I experienced it, she did this remembering meditation, and it was so powerful. And so I've asked her to do it today for all of you. You're welcome in advance, because it's really powerful. So welcome, Val.
Wow, Monica, thank you. I'm so always excited to be in the conversation, especially with you. You know, we've had some really deep ones, and we're like, gotta put it out there to the world. Yeah, right now it's more important than ever to be engaged in conversation about what's going on and who we are and how we relate to what's happening around us and how we move forward with more awareness, right? Mm-hmm. So thank you for a bit of that introduction. You want me to introduce myself? I'm Val Silidker. Yep, I'm the co-founder and director of Psychospiritual Institute. I'm a deep ecologist. I used to be a professor at Florida International University, teaching ecology and sometimes deep ecology. And so my roots are really in deep ecology, ecotherapy, and spiritual psychology. And I've been an activist for decades. And at the heart of it all is really about supporting us to remember who we are on the deepest level, the largest context. You know, because when we start from that point of really tapping into ourselves in the largest way, it helps us to be who we are more fully in the world, right? We can hold everything. We have a larger capacity than we think we do. So yeah, it's all about helping us remember who we are so we can live fully aligned, right? It's like our awareness and our action, right? The life that we are meant to live into the world. And if we all stand in that place and we show up in that way, we create this conscious evolutionary movement, and we're able to, you know, consciously move our world forward. And we know that that's what we need right now more than anything.
And that's what we want. That's what we want. And I just don't think that we all know how important our role is as an individual. And I'm excited to get into that with you today.
100%. Absolutely. It's so important. So we shall begin at the beginning.
All right, let's do it. All right.
So we're going to start with a beautiful meditation that allows us to go on a journey through time, a journey that invites us to connect with who we are, the beginning of it all. So everybody who's tuning in, I want to just invite you to find a comfortable place to be with, hopefully removing any distractions so you can really, truly, fully tune in right now. And if for any reason it's not possible, just be with us in whatever capacity you can, and then come back later and give yourself this gift. Yeah. All right. So go ahead and take a full deep breath. Let's begin with that breath. Breathing in and slowly exhaling, and close your eyes. Wherever you are, just close your eyes. And settling into yourself. And I invite you to place your hand, whatever hand feels good, over your heart. Place your hand over your heart, and as you breathe, just take a moment to feel into your own heartbeat. Feel into your rhythm. And with every breath you take, just sinking in deeper and deeper. Allowing yourself to connect, to feel present, and to tune in deeply. And as you connect with your heartbeat, allow that rhythm to take you back, way back to the first fire at the beginning of time. And breathing in. As you slowly exhale, just release your hand very gently, relaxing your hand down, but being connected to that rhythm, that heartbeat. As we begin at the beginning, that immense hot birth of the universe over 13 billion years ago. I was there. You were there. For that same energy still burns in every cell of your body today. So it began a long time ago as hot swirls of gas and dancing particles. From this great mystery, the universe was created. And it exploded into hydrogen atoms, into galaxies. And 4.5 billion years ago, our solar system was created, and our Earth. And inside the Earth burned tremendous fires for millions and millions of years, billions of years, until finally it cooled enough for it to rain, and the oceans were born. And inside the ocean, that magic of that first single cell. Can you remember floating as a single cell in the primordial seas? Feel the lightness of your body. As we began duplicating ourselves, creating DNA, reproducing. Every cell in our body is descended from those first ones. And then we began linking up with others, becoming multi-celled organisms, sponges and jellyfish, developing sensory perception. Can you remember being a slim, silvery creature, only an inch long? Feel the muscles from your head all the way down your body as they slowly begin to solidify, becoming vertebrae. And we have now created the first backbone. And now we swim as fish, swimming with grace, the water streaming past and through our gills. for millions of years existing in this water world. And then finally, our bodies begin to slowly change once again as we propel ourselves through the mud and vegetation as amphibians between two worlds. Feel the muscles around your fins becoming stronger, the bones in your fins becoming longer, and the tips of your fins more claw-like as you begin to climb onto land. Can you remember blinking your eyes in the sunlight as you pushed up onto dry land for the first time? And now we begin to lay eggs on the land, turning into reptiles, large reptiles roaming the earth, and then developing hair and fur, becoming mammals. Our legs becoming stronger and swifter, searching for food, predators, and prey. Can you remember curling up to sleep all warm together in our den? And as we sleep, we dream. And as we dream, the rule of the dinosaurs fades away. And now we're free as mammals to take on thousands of shapes, and we begin to spread across the land, passing on our wisdom. Becoming lighter, we take to the trees, leaping and climbing, strong, opposable thumbs, grasping limbs. We are curious, we're playful, we're adventurous. We begin to develop some kind of culture, some warmth, some aliveness between us. And now, as we awaken stronger and heavier, coming out of the trees and onto the grasslands, another transformation takes place. And we begin to stand upright in the savannah. Now, as we gaze out into the grasslands, we become aware of ourselves in a new way. And evolution takes an inward turn. We awaken to the next chapter of our evolutionary journey, utilizing tools, developing language, harnessing fire, creating music and art and stories, living together as gatherers and hunters for thousands of generations. Can you remember? See the faces of grandmothers and grandfathers lit by the evening fire, the dance of shadow and light on their face. And if you look deeply, you may see some resemblance to your own face, for these are your ancestors. And now we begin to cultivate food, building markets and temples to the heavens, developing government and medicine, industry, brain surgery, generation after generation, building upon itself. Life, learning, exploding with information. And finally, bringing you into this lifetime, where once again, you find yourself floating. This time, in the womb of your mother. And once again, in this water world, you begin to go through all the stages of evolution, absorbing your tail, developing the nervous system, the backbone, the complexity of the brain, all of life unfolding, the information of your DNA, of all that life has learned unfolding in you, as you. And now being born into this world at this time. Now an infant, clinging to your mother, your father, your guardian. And as you grow, see your own life unfolding, your joys, your heartaches, the laughter and love, the brilliance of each beautiful moment, each experience of your life shaping you into the person that you are all of it bringing you here into this present moment now, right here on this call, right here in the midst of this global experience. And as you breathe into this space, into this time, hold within you all of the wisdom of everything that has ever been, opening up the doorway to the potential for all that may be. Timeless, infinite, all past, all future here, now, in this moment. And now slowly breathing in. Just hold your breath for one moment, connecting to that stillness and that depth within you. And slowly, deeply releasing that breath. Tuning in to what's ready to be birthed within you. What life and what gifts, what unique way of being, all that's here inside of you. This deep time, this deep awareness. And as you stay connected, coming back into your body, into our call. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. And just take a moment to be here with your eyes open, really open to this entire journey that's still present within you. Remembering that you are the mystery that gave birth to the universe, the intelligence of life, alive as you, the fire that fashioned galaxies has created you. This is what we are. This is the depth of our being. And remembering it as a starting point for consciously creating the world we want to live in. Let's just take that in for a moment.
Yeah. So beautiful, so profound. Oof. Oh. And it was, for me, I've heard this meditation so many times intentionally because I love it so much. And it was so beautiful to listen to it in this time, even different, this moment. Coming from, my experience holding all of what's happening in the world right now, floating in the primordial seas, as a single-celled organism, imagining myself so connected to like what we're most afraid of right now, like imagining myself as it in that moment was so beautiful and so powerful. And this is the remembering. It's like when we're in this fear, forgetting this journey that you just so beautifully reminded us of.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Monica. It's so true. It's like, everything that's happening right now in this moment is part of an interconnected whole, and when we can take a step back to see the larger picture of it all, it feels different. We feel different in relationship to what's happening around us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, even in the sense of deep time, it's like life has experienced, the evolution of the universe we've experienced so many different crises throughout time. And crisis is an interesting thing because it's through these different crises that we've experienced. I think evolutions happen faster. Like change happens faster when we're in the midst of crises, right? And I've been thinking of like even just like the universe story as we're diving into this, and like we had this huge sun, this great mother star, right? And then it got so big it became a supernova and it exploded, and there was this crazy cataclysmic death. And from that death came 9 planets and a new sun, one of them being Earth, right? It's like when the Earth first started, those first single cells gave oxygen as an off gas. Like it ate hydrogen, right? So it took hydrogen out of the water and released the oxygen into the air, and the oxygen became poison. And it wasn't until the mitochondria created a symbiotic relationship with the eukaryote cell, right, that all of a sudden there was a way to bring oxygen in as food in a way, right? Like it took oxygen in and was able to do that, and so life gets creative. Right? When evolution happens under the greatest amount of pressure. And when we're under this kind of pressure, we're forced into creativity. We're forced into like new ways of being. We have to ask deeper questions in moments like this. And that's the starting point for what this opportunity in this crisis that feels very big right now. There's
Very
also
big.
invitation, right?
And to your point, before we get into the invitation, I love what you just said. It's like, and I felt that as well. Like when I was like, I felt my claws arriving, and thinking like, what had to have happened in order for those claws to arrive? What had to have happened in order for us to be walking through the mud, for us to, all of those, like you mentioned, those changes. And nobody had to do anything. Nobody had to force anything for that evolution to happen. Like the magic unfolded on its own because life wants to evolve. There's life is evolving. We've always been evolving, that never ended. It never stopped. It's just now we're stopping and thinking like, whoa, what's going on right now? It's like now is this pause, this like everything's been taken away, being taken away, everything's dismantling, everything, everything's, it's all, things are big changes happening in this moment. And it's now like, it's so big that now as a collective, we're like, okay, something's happening here. And as you mentioned, it's this invitation. So I would love to hear, tell, everybody about this invitation and what it's inviting us to look into and to how to, I guess, be and experience this in this moment.
Yeah, so that's a huge question, right? So let's start to like break it apart.
Yeah.
Let's take a look. So the first thing that's coming to me right now is there's a quote that I love to share from Thich Nhat Hanh, and he was once asked, "What do we most need to do to help heal the world?" And he said, "What we most need to do is to hear within us the sound of the earth crying." And this feels like such a profound, invitation, right? That's the invitation right now. It's like we've been hearing this for a while, those of us that have been listening, but many of us haven't been listening, right? We've been moving along, business as usual, with our busy, busy lives, caught up in a world moving so fast, and kind of trapped and lost in sort of a consumer vision and this like dominant paradigm of separation, right? So
Physical materialism,
materialism, all of this stuff, we're like caught up in this, right? And so meanwhile the earth is crying, and so much is happening. This coronavirus and this pandemic that's happening right now it's like a new experience for us as far as like a human species to experience like a global pandemic where we're all tapped in with the technology that we have. We've had pandemics before, right? But not at the way that we're able to communicate it. So it's different, right? And we're also in the midst of a mass extinction, right? We're also, there's so much toxicity and this world is so polluted and we're so sick and cancer is on the rise. Like so much is also happening simultaneously, and we've been like nudged and pushed and shaken a little bit, and like all this stuff is happening, and now finally we're like, wake up. There's no way we can deny it. The whole entire world, it's like life is forcing us to go to our rooms and think about what we've done. Like this is that's like pause. You cannot keep doing what we're doing. And so even as we're like going into our dens, right, we're all coming into our quarantine and our space, the earth is taking a huge deep breath. For a moment, just let me breathe for a moment, you know.
And it knew
And now
to get that
for us
breath.
to
You
listen.
didn't have to do anything. Like it was like, I'm taking a breath and this is what's happening because
Yeah, life is taking a breath. Everything's interconnected, right? It's not like the humans and the earth. Everything is interconnected. It's like we're going, and we're receiving this feedback like, hey, yo, pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. And you know, in living systems, when nothing's going wrong, there's no feedback. It's like negative feedback. There's nothing really happening. But as soon as something starts going wrong in the system, there's an alert. That's called positive feedback. You know, right now globally, we're receiving some massive feedback that's saying you have to shift or the system is going to collapse.
like the way our body does, our human body does. Like when you have the alarm, you get sick, you get a physical manifestation, you get, and even emotions can be an alarm. But we are now seeing the bigger body that there are, you know, which is the earth. I mean, and you know, yes, keep going. Sorry.
No, yeah, right on. It's like our bodies are always striving for homeostasis, 98.6 degrees. Like each system wants to create the optimum conditions for life. Our body wants to create that. Earth is alive. It's a living organism, right? It is
Okay,
a living,
let's say that
just
again.
as
I don't think everybody knows that.
yes, right? Life is a living organism,
Yeah.
not alive in the same way consciously that we are, as far as we know, but definitely a living system. And as a living system with interconnected and interdependent parts, it is also always striving for some kind of balance. And right now we have a species, the human species, that has populated out of control. And the choices that we're making because we think that we're separate from the earth, right? We're doing all kinds of things that are causing our larger body to get sick, which is affecting us, of course, because the outer world and the inner world are interconnected. So we
Mm-hmm.
can't live in a poisonous world without being poisoned inside our bodies. That's why we're so sick, right? And so look at this living system. This living system is saying there has to be some kind of balance, you know. And here we have this global virus. What is that? What's going on right now? You know, there's an invitation for a deeper pause. There's an invitation for us to really take a look at what's happening here. You know, and the earth is striving to create some kind of balance. And I think that that's what's going on with this virus, and more, much more to come. You know, I think this is only the beginning.
I
And
agree.
unless we really listen and hear the sound of the earth crying, and not just listen and expect it to happen magically, but listen and make changes. Listen and take action, right? Awareness is only part of it. It's awareness and will. We have to align our will and our action with what we know to be true. You know, so it's not enough to just sit here and have a conversation and talk about this is happening. It's about, then what do we do with this? How do I show up in my life differently because of this experience?
And so, what is the invitation? How can we show up differently in our lives?
Yeah, I mean, that's where does it start? I mean, there's so much. You know, first of all, I think that one of the most important things we can do, and Monica, you and I were talking about this briefly even before the call, is to allow ourselves to turn toward what is, to be with what is, you know, with wild presence, you know, wild presence. You know, but I think we live in a world that is, like I always say, we're like a nation of escape artists. You know, we're taught that it's not okay to feel, that some emotions are actually bad emotions, right? You just got to be happy all the time, right? We don't turn toward the things that feel uncomfortable or that seem uncomfortable. So, one of the first things I would say is that we need to turn toward ourselves and really be with what's here. What is coming up for us? What's present for us? You know, what are the wounds that we hold that we need to heal in order to live more openly, more fully as ourselves? So I think a good starting point, besides getting understanding ourselves in this larger context, right? So we can hold ourselves here, and now we're invited to do the work because we have this deeper relationship with life, right? So we turn towards our emotions. You know, we start there. Be present with what is, and really acknowledge what's here, and allow yourself to do the work and understand. Like when we talk about feedback, you touched on it a second ago, and you said emotions are also feedback. You know, and we live in a world that numbs out, that runs away, that doesn't allow us to really be with what's here. So a good starting point is to allow ourselves to feel. And if there's sadness and if there's grief and if there's, righteous anger, that's our passion for justice, like whatever it is that's here, be with it and ask the deeper questions about what information is there for me in these emotions.
Mhm. What wisdom is there? And what one thing that I would also add that I see a lot as well is like, because because we have been trained to not feel, to not want to be, that things are bad, emotions are bad. Then when we do feel, I shouldn't be feeling this way. There's judgment for feeling this way. And especially for those of you that have already been doing the work, why am I still going through this? Why am I still experiencing this? And for me, the way that I saw this was, because it was simply like a magnification and amplification of what was already here for me, which is why it's such a gift. And I think that's the reframe that really for me was a big shift in my own life, in my own transformation, was when I stopped making it bad, when I saw it as this opportunity, because it's our own evolution, and you're going to be different no matter what, whether you do something or not. Like, life is going to move you through this evolution, because as a collective we need this. Like, your individual part, you're a part of a greater whole, and every single one of you, you're like so important. You're so like life or death important, the way that you take this on right now. And so just even understanding that, like, I think is a really important thing, maybe leading us into that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, so Rumi said the cure for the pain is in the pain, right? So when we turn towards what's here, it allows us to know ourselves more deeply. We talk about the dark night of the soul. It's those the hardest and most challenging moments of our life that we are invited to really see the strength and the gifts that we have within us. Oftentimes, like on a personal level, when we experience something that feels incredibly challenging, a lot of times it puts us on our path. We go through a massive heartbreak and all of a sudden we wake up to what we're really passionate about, and our whole life takes a completely different turn. There is so much information in being present with what we feel. It allows us to talk about adapting. It's like there's so many changes happening right now, and we need to move ourselves into the sense of deep adaptation. And the only way for us to be able to create adaptation is for us to be really conscious with what's happening. And that, again, means being present and feeling what's here, right? There's so much information. So, on a personal level, when we experience those challenges, we grow, we wake up, we see something in ourselves that feels more deeply connected to purpose. And right now, I think on a global level, humanity is invited into this dark night of the soul. We're invited to take a look at who we are as humans. What does it mean to be human right now? How do we show up in this world, as humans, and really allow ourselves as a community, as a global community, to take steps that move us forward, that honor life as sacred, that recognize that we are interconnected and interdependent with life. And the way that we treat this body of the earth is also the way we're treating ourselves, and this, it's inevitable that the systems that are in place right now are going to crumble. It's absolutely inevitable because it is unsustainable. And that which is unsustainable cannot continue. That's the definition. And so we're invited into this place right now where we need to connect so deeply with our capacity to hold what's here. So a lot of times I'll joke around and people say, "What do you do?" And I'm like, I'm in the business of building resilience. Because, right, resilience is our ability to be with what it is and experience whatever it is, and to bounce back even stronger than before.
And you will like bounce back stronger if you are here with what is, um, one thing though is like, a couple things that I want to clear up, because it's easy to have this conversation because I know what you're talking about, and I know that there are people that might not out there that don't know. Like, so one thing you said is like, there's so much information. So that emotions are energy and information, and so what is the information for those? Like, like, that would be my question if I didn't know. Like, what does she mean by information? What does she mean by there's so much information in moving through the emotions?
Yeah, beautiful. So, for instance, if we um, let's say we're moving into some kind of grief, like we're feeling a lot of sadness coming up. There's a lot of death happening in our world right now. Even if it's not affected you on a personal level or somebody close to you, we see it and feel it and know that it's happening. And the fact that we can feel beyond ourselves is evidence of our interconnectedness with life, like right there, right? So taking all of that in, if we move into distraction, because it feels so heavy and we're constantly distracting, and not allowing ourselves to be with that grief, what we could be missing out on, where if we were to center into that grief and really feel our sadness and ask ourselves, what is it? What am I grieving for? What is here in this? I think what we would discover is that when we grieve, we recognize our love. We recognize that we're deeply in love with something, because we only grieve for what we love and care about. And so, for instance, allowing ourselves to feel grief not only allows us to process it and breathe through it and move through it in a healthful way so we can come out the other side resilient, right? And bounce back into who we are. But it allows us to recognize that there's something deeply that we love. So our grief shows us our love, right? For instance, so let's say we're feeling um, fear. There's a lot of fear of uncertainty right now, right? We don't know what's going to happen next, right? And so we could numb out. We can distract ourselves. Again, distract, run away, think, keep busy, watch Netflix, like do all the things we have to do to not think and feel. But if we allow ourselves to be present with our fear and say, what am I feeling? What am I afraid of? And we can get to a more clear picture of what it is that we're afraid of. And maybe we're saying, I'm really afraid because I don't know what's going to happen next. I have so much uncertainty. Well, we know that life is full of uncertainty, first of all. And if we really look deep into that, what we might actually find is the thoughts, I don't think I can handle this. What if I can't take on whatever comes next? What if I'm not capable? What if I can't pivot my business? What if things fall apart? Like there's all these what if things that start going on that comes from a space of maybe not feeling totally capable, right? So it invites us not only into understanding what it is that we're feeling and thinking, but it invites us to recognize that we are capable and whole, and that by moving into that, we also tap into our courage. So if we're starting to feel fear and we're allowing ourselves to settle into that and see what it is, what we're also feeling is our courage to feel the fear. So now it's tapping into courage. We start to feel more courageous. We start to feel more present with it, because we can have our fear and still move forward. So being with fear allows us to tap into our courage, right? So that's the other side of fear. So we can now, grief taps into our love, fear taps into our courage. And in our courage, we can recognize that who we are is so much bigger than we think we are. That I may have a fear that I'm not capable, but I know in my life I have been capable of handling so many other things. So even though I'm afraid, I can still move with this, because who I am is capable and whole and resourceful and creative. And that is inside of me. So it opens up a deeper conversation inside ourselves when we start to be with the emotions that we're experiencing.
And
that's how important it gives us the information.
so powerful. And so in essence, you end up seeing yourself in this whole new way, which obviously will affect everything that you do, every relationship, every conversation, in every way that you show up, because now you're seeing yourself, and experiencing life in this whole new way. And you're expanding your bandwidth, in a whole new, you're totally expanded because you're going through these emotions and in essence, shifting your consciousness. Which is why this is important, not just for you and your individual self, but because we are part of collective. We want to see a whole new world. Like what's about to happen is a new chapter. We all want a new world. Like, that's the conversation that I'm feeling, the systems can't hold us, the president this, the earth this, like everybody's got, their idea of what they'd like to see. And it's also easy to just talk about it. And it's like, there's a part of us that's like, bringing it into Joanna Macy. What can I possibly do? What can I possibly do about this? But the beautiful thing about this life is that because everything is interconnected, because your consciousness is connected to the greater consciousness, by you going through and dealing with this grief and dealing with this fear, guess what? You're changing the whole outcome. You're helping shifting the consciousness of the entire world. This is why this is so important.
It's so important, 100%. I mean, look, when we repress our pain, we repress our emotions, it doesn't go away. we bury it into our subconscious, and it comes out in little moments with our children and little moments with our partners, with our friends. It comes out as violence in the world on larger levels. It is so important for us to be honest and be real with what's here. I think one of the most dangerous things that's going on in our world is apathy and numbing out. And there's so much of it because the world feels really big and heavy and overwhelming. But it's important to know that we're not alone in this. And I think another side of that is the what we see kind of happening sometimes in spiritual communities is the transcendence, which is that now I don't need to be feeling all of this because who I am is so much bigger than that. So I'm just going to kind of spiritually bypass it away. So spiritual bypassing is another really important thing that I think we should address here. So, on one level, we have the numbing out and running away and not feeling anything and then getting lost in the chaos and all of that. And on another level, we have I'm just going to go meditate in a cave and I don't need to feel any of this because it's not real, because who I am is just energy.
I don't want to be around negative people, around negative news, around anything whatsoever. Yeah.
Ever. Like, I don't even want to know what's going on in the world. And this is very prevalent. And the reason why this is also a problem on the other side of that is because, first of all, that's another form of repression. Yes. And running away. Okay. And whatever it is that is there, that actually is there, because we are also humans having a human experience here too, gets pushed down the same way. It gets repressed, and it's going to pop out in different ways. So it's not a real way of dealing or feeling anything. Look, you guys, there's no such thing as negative emotions. This is a very important concept to understand. It's not like if I'm happy, it's good, and if I'm sad, it's bad, even though we're kind of taught that in the world, right? It's not. Emotions are completely neutral, and it's how we hold them and look at them and really welcome them in. I'm thinking of the Rumi poem, The Guest House. It's like these emotions come to your door, welcome them in, have a feast with your emotions, like get to know them as a good friend that's coming here carrying a message from another mysterious land to support you and love you and honor you and teach you and help you grow into the person you're meant to be. So no spiritual bypassing, because we have to dig our roots down into the earth. And that means to feel it all and be really in the mess of it with the love of who we are, with also the awareness. We know, like, in Monica and I, this work psychosynthesis, and in this work and in mindfulness in general, what we talk about is the loving observer. Okay. So when we say feel the emotions, I think this is a really important distinction and clarification here. We're not just talking about become overwhelmed and paralyzed by the emotions, right? We're talking about noticing them, being with them. So like if I'm feeling, the sadness of our world, which has been coming in waves through my heart, there are moments when I just have to sit and I have tears in my eyes for all that we're holding. And I'm breathing through that. And then at the same time, I'm also allowing myself to connect more deeply with the one who's noticing, the loving observer, the part of me that can see that I'm having an emotional experience, right? Who is the one noticing when we go into a meditation and we see our thoughts and we experience our feelings and everything that's there for us, right? So you move into both the experience of the emotions and the loving observer, the one that's able to, with unconditional love and acceptance, be with what is and hold you while you're experiencing the emotion. So it doesn't become, you don't identify so strongly with it, right? So we feel it and we know that who we are is so much more than our emotions. And that is really, really important concept to recognize that. So as we turn toward our emotions and we allow ourselves to be present with what is, we're also loving ourselves and our ability to feel that deeply and think, being so incredibly grateful that we can feel that deeply. Because when we open ourselves to the depths of our emotions, we also open ourselves to the depths of our love for the world and ourselves and each other. And love is a superpower that's going to move us forward.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Something I would love to add to that. That was so beautiful. And I'm so happy that you felt to say that, because you're right. That's absolutely important, because I don't know that everybody knows to do that. And in what you were saying, like, I think a place to start, the invitation to start is also, if like, the relationship you have to the emotion, because and like, how do you feel about the feeling? In being that silent observer, what I love to call it is, because there is like they're just temporary. And, there's a really classic exercise in psychosynthesis of like, I am not my thoughts, I am not my emotions, I'm not this body, I am the stream of consciousness. And so I love what gets me, and what how I help my clients as well to reframe, to like recenter, is like, I'm the blue sky and the emotions are just the clouds. The emotions are like the storms. Like, you can witness the clouds, you can witness the storms, but no matter what, the blue sky is always there. It is always, it never moves. It's constant. It's, and so just remembering that is who you are, is really, really.
Also, Monica, that blue sky that we say, right? That blue sky, also the intelligence of the universe,
Yes.
also the cosmos, also like so, a lot of times we refer to the both and, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are both this human having this experience, and we are the intelligence of the universe. Let's think about that, the remembering, this cosmic journey, like all of that wisdom of life is who we are, and we are each a unique expression of that intelligence. Like, that's what we are. And going back to something you said earlier in the conversation around how each of us is so unique, and we have to recognize that. There's a beautiful quote from Tom Yeomans, and he says, the central paradox of human spiritual maturity is that as we become one with all creation, we also at the same time become completely and uniquely ourselves. And that is so important to recognize. Like, no two people have the same fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, the stripes in every zebra are different, right? The back of every dorsal fin of every orca has a different pattern. Like, every single species on this planet is completely unique by design. We're
Just
meant to
sit with
express
that for a minute.
only
How is that even possible? Right? And like, ooh, God, and we're also interconnected, and we're also one. Like, the beautiful design of that. And that the work that I did with you is like, that's what I got, like, the psychosynthesis was so powerful, but there was a part in our training where we experienced the ecology, the ecological self, the connectedness to all. And in that, really, my life changed, because in that moment, in that point of the learning, of the training, is where I really, really got what you had just said earlier, like a few statements before, of that we're human and we're spirit, we're like, and the beauty, like, and it's not just like human, the good or whatever. It's like the raw, the ugly, the bloody, the tears, the sweat. It's like the beauty of all of it. And we're also the magnificence of the universe, and in that integration, and it's all sacred. It's all sacred because it's all creation. Like, just the remembering that you had, the remembering meditation reminded us that we started, everything is all creation. And so the emotions are sacred. The virus is sacred. All of it, every part of this existence is divine creation. And so therefore it's sacred. And when you can flip the script to see life in that way, that's where, for me, is where I experience the beauty of it, even in the dismantling. And you can hold, like, that I've learned through you, is like, you can hold the joy, you can hold the beauty, the love, and you can also hold the grief. Because, like you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, we have the capacity to hold it all.
Like, the heart that breaks open can hold the entire universe. It's that big. This is a moment for all of us to allow our hearts to break open and to hold everything that's here, because it opens us to compassion, which is the ability to feel with one another, right? It opens us to a deeper wisdom, the knowing of our interconnectedness with life. And when we breathe into that and we recognize that, how does knowing this shift the way we show up in the world? That's the big question right there. How can we show up and participate in a larger way with this?
And this participating in the world could mean anything. Like, it doesn't mean you have to go be an activist. It could be like, how do I show up in my household? How do I show up in my business? How do I show up in everything? Like, as a human being, like, in this journey as a human being, how am I showing up with each other? How am I showing up online? How am I showing up, and so it's like, I think that's like, that's the really the invitation again, is like, you don't have to do something so like out there to make a change here, to make a change in the world, in the shifting of the consciousness of the world that the earth is crying for right now. You can do it right here, right now. You can do it by going inward. You can do it in conversation. Like, what seems so small are huge ripples, huge breakthroughs. And when you shift, you're shifting ancestral lineages. Like, for all the mothers out there, you're shifting generations before you. I mean, I had a really incredible experience where I connected to my own ancestral lineage, and I felt, and I've been, shifts happening, and like, what happened before me didn't happen in vain, and not even just for my ancestral lineage, but for all the women before me, for all that, so like, there's just so much,
Yeah, and yes, and yes, and I love your passion. I love our passion, because this is the time to get passionate about all of this right now. And it is true. It's like, that what we have access to, you asked her, like, what are we doing? What do we need to do, to make a difference? And, starting with turning inward toward ourselves. I believe that is a beginning point, right? So we have our larger context, we turn in toward ourselves. I think another part is to recognize that we have a will. We have an ability to make choices every single moment. With every breath we take, we have an ability to show up. And so what is life asking of us right now, with this whole thing that's going on? What is life asking of you in this moment? How are you showing up in a larger way? And by larger, as Monica was beautifully saying, it's like, it doesn't mean leading mass movements or huge organizations, although that might be what you're doing, that you might be invited to show up on that kind of a level. But large meaning the fullness of yourself. How am I invited to show up more fully as myself, more fully human, more fully present to this world? And so on one level, I'm activating my personal will to make choices that are aligned with who I know I am on a deeper level now because of this experience. What is this teaching me? And in what I'm learning, how is it inviting me to show up in a new way, more fully me, right? And then the other question is tapping into our collective will, or what we might call the transpersonal will. There's a larger invitation. So it's not just how am I showing up in my own life, but it's how am I being invited to participate in a larger way in the life of the world. And that can be by just showing up more fully as a mother, right? It can be in so many ways. I think that right now we have to look within ourselves and also know that it's not enough to only look at ourselves, because every choice we make, every out breath is a ripple effect into our world. So how is my life more than just for me? How is my will and my choices, how are they more than just for me?
Mm.
How is my love more than just for me?
Mm. Wow, I love those. Are beautiful journaling questions. I invite you to explore. One of the guests that I had on recently, her name was Wendy Hornung, and she's an astrologist who found a correlation. She studies the correlations between the cycles and historical events. And we are amidst these three really big cycles right now. One of them is having to do with power and boundaries, moving into compassion and oneness. The other one is about excavating truth, and then the last one is this 4,000-year cycle that ended in 2011 of the masculine focus, and then moving into, in 2011, the start of the feminine focus. And so seeing how these energies, with what this discussion has already brought us, and seeing how these energies are at play in this moment, and are going to be moving us, and so we can resist, we can be, or we can know and accept the invitation and move with what will be happening anyway. And the more that we move with what is happening, obviously that's the invitation. And that's the idea, is like what you were mentioning of like, how can I love more than me? Is the oneness. And you're already starting to see the gifts of this. Like, you're already starting to see, I'm seeing in my feed, what it once was a lot, in way more, a lot of compassion, and even in, the fact that with this virus, we, and it's actually very interesting, like the symbolism for the virus. But the virus itself, like, you know, it's all biology. You know, it's seeing us all as this biological. You know, we like, it doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your status, like, you know, you can get it. And so all of a sudden, all the world is looking at each other. You know, even though economically we're, you know, there's obviously like a big disparity, but on that human level, we're now seeing, like, you know, that there is this, like, this, we're all kind of one. And I've been hearing this, like, oh, it's this equalizer. And so the fact that people are talking about it is very interesting, because now it's bringing them into this conversation that they weren't talking about before, but now they are. You know, so I think that that's a beautiful gift of this already. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's definitely opening up a deeper conversation and a deeper inquiry, which is where we need to be.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, was talking about what is this, what's really happening, how do we move forward, with, you know, not just the esoteric concepts and, like, you know, these kind of things, but also like the practical steps. Like, what does that actually look like, you know, in our household, like we just started putting our garden together. You know, we've been, you know, so we're like, what are the practical steps that you are going to start taking to honor life and honor, you know, the compassion within you to care for one another, and, you know, become more like personally sustainable. And, you know, how are you going to start doing that journal and write those questions down that Monica just invited you to do, to look within? You know, what are some steps that you feel like you can take, even the smallest step right now, toward everything that we're talking about, toward, you know, turning toward, right? We talk about the great turning. You know, this time we've referred to it twice. We should probably say what it is.
Yeah,
Monica.
I know.
So many of us are calling this movement right now, that's been happening for quite a while, it's not a new term, the great turning. And one of my mentors, Joanna Macy, uses this term. It comes from David Corton. He has a book called The Great Turning. And it's this invitation to move from this industrial growth society to a life-sustaining society. And in the process is turning toward ourselves, like we were talking about earlier, becoming more present to ourselves, becoming more present toward to the world, turning toward one another, turning toward the deeper questions, like, you know, really this turning toward what does it mean to have a life-sustaining society on every level, emotionally, psychologically, physically, you know, through, you know, planting practices and all the things that we're doing, right? What does it mean to live in a sustaining situation? And so there's different, you know, ways that we participate in the great turning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we want to go deep into that, but it's an invitation. Huh?
Maybe just list them.
I can definitely just list them. There's 3 main dimensions to the great turning, and these are ways that we're invited to participate in taking part in this incredible movement that's happening in our world, right? So, and one of them is your traditional activism, holding actions, you know, protest, civil disobedience, direct action, lobbying, all the things that slow down or stop the things that are hurting our planet, the people, the other animals, humans, everything. You know, like, how can we get involved in that particular way? And some people are really called to that, and sometimes we're called to that, which is where I started, and, you know, really fiercely. And after a while, like, it's a lot of work. It's exhausting. You might even burn out. So thank goodness there's 2 other dimensions, right? We can participate with holding actions, and they're necessary. The second dimension is looking at the root causes of how and why we're here in the first place. Some of the conversations that we're having today, Monica, are part of that investigation. And then building new structures, utilizing old and new technologies, you know, indigenous ways and modern tech, and bringing it together in a way that it honors life. You know, so understanding those root causes and then developing new ways of being, new and old ways. So permaculture design, you know, we have to grow food. Can we grow food that's in alignment with the natural rhythms of the earth, right? And not using poisons and pesticides? You know, can we build buildings in a green way, you know, that use natural materials, or do rooftop gardens, or, you know, in some way think about our educational system, you know, which mirrors our dominant paradigm of compartmentalism and separation. And we're teaching, you know, our children to be functional in a dysfunctional society. It's crazyville out there, right? So there's all these new educations popping up, right? Forest schools and things like that. And then the third dimension is in our shift in perception, which is very much what we're holding today, right? And that involves our spiritual practices. That involves, you know, really diving in deeply to who we are in our relationship to life. And that sometimes means taking the big pause that we're all talking about. slowing down. You
Mhm.
know, you don't have to use this time to be like massively mega productive to the point that you're going insane. Like, take a breath. If your body wants to rest, rest. We're holding a lot right now. And in that, and becoming more present to you, you're participating because you're creating a deeper sense of peace inside of you. And then you get to show up with more presence, and that transforms your relationships with everyone around you and with yourself, right? So all of it has a part to play in the great turning.
Yes. Ah, I love that. I remember being just really being in awe of all of it. And so it's an invitation, if this is something that you want to look into, I explore, there's a lot there because this woman's been doing it for a very long time. So, and maybe that's a conversation for another day. I would love to go in. Is there anything else that you feel like you'd love to add before we go into questions? I actually got a question texted to me. I haven't even looked at Facebook Live, but is there anything else that you feel that is pertinent? Actually, you didn't mention the term positive disintegration. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, I just thought of that too. Yeah, so there's a term, another term, and it help. I think language is very important. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Sometimes it can limit us, but also sometimes it can really connect us, and having just a deeper understanding together. So there's a term called positive disintegration, and I feel like this is a really important term to embrace right now because it is very much what we're experiencing. And so positive disintegration is where the certain way that we've been doing things, the way that the framework with which we've been living our lives, our worldview, all of it, all of a sudden breaks apart or starts to crumble somehow, and we're left in a real space of kind of chaos and confusion and not really knowing what the next step is. So let me give you just an example. For me, a moment when I went through positive disconnect, we go through it many times in our life, by the way, we can. But in my early 20s, my partner at the time was an animal rights activist, and he showed me a video of a slaughterhouse. He showed me a video of a circus and the behind the scenes of elephants being beaten and animals being tested on, and like these were things I had never seen before. I had never thought of before at all. And in seeing them, I was absolutely shocked and couldn't believe what I was seeing and what I had never thought about before. And it literally broke my heart open. And I had to sit there in this totally crazy, it's like I didn't know how to move forward from that point. Everything I thought I knew was not what I thought it was. And I couldn't live my life the way I was living it before because this information really shattered my worldview in a lot of ways. And so there was this moment where the life that I was living just crumbled around me. And from that space, once I sat with it and got present to it and really asked some deeper questions, I was able to emerge from that space a much more awakened version of myself. And it set me on a very powerful path. And so positive disintegration is that place where we kind of get stuck in the chaos and the confusion. It's like exploratory self reorganization, where what emerges from it becomes a much more awakened version of ourselves, a higher level version of ourselves. And that is what we're experiencing right now globally. It's like the systems that cannot sustain themselves are starting to crumble around us. We knew this was happening. We didn't know what it would look like, but we've been waiting for it. Here it is, right? And it's going to continue to happen. And so how do we allow the crumbling of what's happening that we don't jump back into business as usual? Right? We're not going to, oh God, I hope we can get through this in the next 2 months so I can go back to all the things that have been hurting this planet and each other and destroying our world. It's like, whoa, what are we trying to learn from this situation? And we may not know exactly what the next step looks like, but we know that once we start creating choices that honor the alignment of life, the sacredness of life, that next level, when we emerge from this positive disintegration, we're going to come back together at that higher level of consciousness, right? This is the evolution of consciousness, conscious evolution in action. So that's what positive disintegration is. It's positive because the disintegrating ends up being a very positive movement to the next level of who we need to be in the world.
Beautiful. And one thing that came to mind, that you introduced me to were the powers of the universe. That, because it's like in some of what we're experiencing right now, it's like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? It feels foreign. However, it is a part of the powers of the universe and very, very necessary, and can be seen in the body, can be seen in nature, can be seen, in some of the powers that come to mind are destruction, creation, homeostasis, synergy that I, heard you discussing in your interview with Ken Sorensen. So just wanting to bring it, into the knowing of like what we're experiencing very much is a very natural order of life and happens in nature. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think if we just look at death, cataclysm, death, and emergence, in order for things to be born, things have to die, right? Earlier, I mentioned a great crisis of the supernova, our mother sun, our mother star exploding. And from that death, our planet, our sun, our solar system was created. There's always in the universe, there's always this movement of death and rebirth, right? Shiva, like all that energy. We talk about it in so many different mythologies and so many, ways of expressing ourselves poetically. There is a death that is happening in our world right now that is very real. There are literal deaths happening, and there's a metaphoric death happening. So what is going to emerge from this death? That's up to us. That is up to us. And I say that because, at this point in the remembering, right, where we look out at the savannah and we become self-aware, what that means is that we have the curiosity, we have this pull to know ourselves and to become more and more conscious of ourselves. And I think that the more aware we become of who we are, the more we're able to make conscious choices that move us forward, evolutionarily speaking. So we become conscious of the mechanics of evolution. And then as we become more conscious of ourselves, we can actually control how we move forward and evolve. Like, we have the power to do that. The humans are an incredibly powerful species, right? And if we don't do it in a way that's awakened and aware and make conscious choices that are aligned with this greater knowing of who we are, then we continue down this path of destruction. But imagine if we take all of this wisdom, all the information that we've been talking about, that whole journey of remembering and seeing the non-duality of life and the interconnection of life. If we hold that in our hearts, all of us as a human species, we're going to make completely different choices. And imagine the world that we can create. Our imagination is the impetus for everything. Let's imagine a new world, a new movement, that we can make choices towards that. We can imagine a new world that's not this post-apocalyptic damning thing that's shoved into our psyches from every direction. We can imagine a different world. We can create that world. And that is what can be birthed from this cataclysm.
And so beautifully said. So beautiful and so profound. I was like, it was just beautiful. But the other thing I'd love to add to that is not only with the choices that we're making, because you're right, we are this powerful species that we can do. We were so powerful to get us to this point. And we're not victims to that. We're creators. And so also harnessing this imagination that you're talking about. Like, so, if you haven't already, for those of you watching this, if you haven't already thought about, and I think that it's a beautiful invitation to start here. I love to start in the end. What is this new world that you can imagine? Like, what new world can you imagine coming from this? What is the world that you've always wanted? What is the world that you wished you would grow up in? What is the world that you want your kids to grow up in? Like the most ideal. What do you, and imagine it and sit with it and experience what it would be like to live through it and live as if, we're powerful creators that, when we connect to our imaginations, we can create new worlds. And imagine if we were able to do that as a collective, and just thinking about adding that other layer, like why not take the time to sit and think about the possibility?
Yeah, and not only why not, but we have to. It's like every single thing
Right.
that we create, imagine the entire universe imagined itself into being, right? Let's think about this.
Right.
So we here as humans, like, imagination is the first step. Like, think about everything that we write about in science fiction. We start living ourselves toward, right? We imagine first, then we create. So this invitation is necessary. Begin not only imagining for yourself and like create it and write it, but get together with other people. Start imagining what that world can look like. And if we can imagine it, like really start breaking it down, then what are the steps that we need to get there? Right, it has to begin somewhere. It begins with our imagination. So yeah, the imagination is such a huge, important tool that we all need to create the ideal model of what we want to live into right now.
That we've lost. A lot of us have lost it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we,
Yes, right? This world, like, oh my God, by the time we're like 6, the educational system is trying to teach us from here up, and it's like neglecting the whole part of our brain that, like, forget it. Like, make believe imagination is so, we need to bring it back. It's the most
and you
powerful
can
thing
do
that we
that. You can do that at home. You can do that and I love that. Get into groups, you know, and get into like, and this is a beautiful, like, what do we do with our time? I don't know. Let's have a virtual meetup and like imagine an amazing world. Like I would totally be down for that conversation.
That's cool. It reminds me of that group meditation process where I've done it with you, where like, you know, one person starts and then we pause and the next person comes in with where they are. There we go, the collective imagining. I love it.
Oh, I love it too. Like choose your own adventure, but like create your own adventure.
Yes.
Love it.
That's what we're doing, guys.
Yeah, we are. It's so beautiful.
Choose our own adventure here. Let's choose.
Awesome. So I'm going to take a look now and see at if we've got any questions. I know we have one here. We can start with the one that I do know. Here we go. Oh man, 19 comments. Let's take a look. I don't know if you're able to see. You know what? I'm going to go through.
Facebook or?
Yeah, I'm going to go through my phone. Well, I got texted one, so let's just start here and then I'll continue to go. So this question is from Brittany, and she's so, you know, in experiencing all of this, she wants to know, I'm curious about your perspective on her experience of this. She's going, you know, obviously we go through many seasons, many waves, and the very wave that she's experiencing right now is boredom. And so wanting to know, like, I guess like our perspective on or how to maybe experience it, how to deal with it, you know, is there wisdom in this? You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, the first thing that comes to me, Britt, when you're talking about boredom as a mother, and Monica, maybe you can relate to this, and any other mothers out there, we're always invited to allow our children to be bored. Boredom is a great thing. Why? Because when we're bored, we inevitably are invited to tap into our imagination and our creativity. You know, what do I want to create in this time? What is something that's dormant within you that you've been passionate about throughout your life that you haven't done in a while? Like, this is the time to start tapping into our creativity. Yes. You know, I think creativity is so important right now. You know, we were just going off on this riff on imagination and how important imagining is, and part of that, right, like the sister is creativity. So what can you do right now that's a creative expression? You know, like we're all homeschooling our kids at the moment, right? So I've been doing a lot of painting and drawing, and, you know, now getting into gardening and like doing all this wonderful stuff that's just, it feels good, you know. So what is something that you want to try to breathe into? I mean, to just play with. It doesn't have to mean anything, but just start there, and then see if there's something that's maybe aligned with who you are and your deeper sense of purpose. That might be like another skill or something fun you could learn to add to it, or anything you've ever wanted to explore. Like, utilize that time, so you don't have to just, you know, sit there in the space of boredom, but like let boredom be a gateway. You know?
Oh, let boredom be a gateway. I love that. And, you know, and I don't believe this is true for her, because she's like the type that explores everything. But for those of you that are feeling bored and don't like it, you know, I feel like there's something that happens before letting boredom be a gateway is, if you don't like being bored, then maybe explore. What is it about the boredom that you don't like? Like, what is it about your relationship to boredom that you're resisting? You know, and so what would it feel like to just be bored for a moment? And then from there, you know, like, you know, from there, okay, then that's where I believe, like, okay, it leads you. one of the practices I recently really started was like the emptying of myself, like the emptying of myself. So it's not like necessarily the doing is, you know, because like I'm an achiever, I'm always going, I'm always doing, which I see the quality in. Obviously it's, you know, it's necessary, and so is just the being. And so this like this new way of being, of like of just completely emptying myself to nothingness, and what comes from there, and letting life lead me, you know. So in the space of boredom, you know, in that space, maybe not even labeling it boredom, but like, what if it's just what is, again, you know, moving.
This part with being, right? We're talking about doing. We're so used to doing so much that just being in a state of not doing and just being can like move us to the edge of our comfort zone. So that's an opportunity always when we come to the end of what feels uncomfortable. And just like you're saying, Monica, is to look into that. Like, what is my relationship with this part of me that's feeling uncomfortable with simply being still? Do I have a thought that says, if I'm being still, I'm not being productive and I'm not, you know, doing anything, therefore I'm not good at, like, what's going on there? What's deeper in your thought process, you know, in that part of you that's feeling uncomfortable with being still? That's so big. So yeah, that's really important point, Monica.
Yeah, it's just like, I think like what you brought into at the beginning was like about about children, and how we're trying to get our kids bored, and like, because I mean, if you think about what we were all like, we grew up as, you know, there was none of the technology, and so boredom is now actually this, like, it's a gift. You know.
And that's another thing too. It's like our world with the technology that we have today, everything is so overstimulated. We are overstimulated beings. You know, we're constantly like looking for the hit that right? We're looking at our phone, we're looking for this, we're looking for that. What would it look like? Can you imagine? It's like the glass ceiling. Like, what happens when you're able to sit and breathe and be with that discomfort and then break through that? What freedom is on the other side of that?
And
You
feel
know?
the glass ceiling, like I'm here with you right now, and I don't need to do anything with you yet. Let me just experience the glass ceiling for a moment, because no moment is the same, and I will never be here with this glass ceiling exactly like this, like right now. And so there's actually a beauty to this unique moment. Like, you will never be bored in this way ever again, even if you're bored again tomorrow. So like, what is it to like really honor and experience this just like it is right now, and then, yeah, exactly, experiencing then the breakthrough.
Yeah, awesome.
So juicy and beautiful. Okay, we've got some people watching. Does anybody have any questions? And if not, we can continue the conversation, because I think we're, you know, I think everybody's enjoying it. Brittany says, definitely tied to being unproductive. Love the gateway imagery and allowing a child to just be bored. Beautiful. Awesome. Let me see. Let me go back into my notes and see what else I've got here that we didn't touch on. We've been through a lot together in this conversation. I'm really, it turned out better than I wanted it to. I guess a crystal question for you. When we were imagining, like, the invitation to imagine the better world, you know, or the next chapter, what are you imagining?
That's a great question. Yeah, let's play there. I mean, I hold a vision. I hold a vision. The first thing that comes to me goes right to here, right to my heart. Like, I want, like, everything is living through my heart. And so for me, um, compassion is a huge piece. You know, I think especially, gosh, with all the numbing out and repression and so much of violence is in our world right now, and so much hate and so much, um, you know, even like the other day, a dear friend of mine, I don't know if anybody knows Rabbi Mark Labowitz. He's a local, beautiful rabbi leader in our South Florida community. And he was recently doing something on Zoom. I just had this conversation with him today, and Nazis popped on and like hijacked his spiritual gathering, you know. And so like there's a lot of this energy in the world, this ignorant, like disconnected, um, desire to belong, right, can become very confining and create an us versus them. So my first vision centers around our ability to feel with one another, to be the loving observer with one another, you know, to see all of us in our unique ways of being and our unique ideas and in ways that we're different, and to hold each other with the understanding that we are ultimately connected. So when we see somebody who has a very different point of view, we don't all of a sudden become the them, the us and them, right? But we hold them with love. We hold them with compassion. It's like the loving kindness, the metta, it's just really like, how do we see even the people who challenge us the most and wish them to be free from suffering and free from the ignorance that creates the behavior that hurts other people in this world and other animals and life. So wishing the world to be free of ignorance so that we could really live through our hearts in a space of compassion. And what would that look like? What would it look like if we lifted each other up and if we worked together and we collaborated together, to create amazing things that honor life, new ways of being. It's like there's the dystopia and then there's the utopia. I mean, there's all the process steps that happen in between getting to the space that we dream. But I
And
do
to
believe
add,
it begins.
beautiful. And I would say my first is also compassion as well. And to add to what you just beautifully said, it took me into the journey of the possibility, is also that even the ignorance, what can we do as on the other side of it, is be compassionate, for those that are, hate, for the, and what's helped me to really be able to do that, to access compassion even for those who hurt me, even for those who hurt the world, even for those that are like, you know um you know like you mentioned, like, that are really creating, the opposite of compassion, is to remember that they're also sacred, to remember that they're also divine, to remember that they're also a part of us, and in some way a mirror, in some way, and
In some ways a catalyst.
you're right, exactly,
Right? So we
purpose.
think, oh my God, there should never be any pain. There should never be any suffering. There should never be any bad guys. There should never be, but wait a minute. Like, it's those things that create the impetus. It creates the need. It creates the crisis that allows creativity to flow through, that allows that next step of evolution we're like pushed into evolution. Like I started off in the beginning saying evolution happens under the greatest amount of pressure. Well, these things become a catalyst to create the pressure for us to move into that next step of being. So, life is always learning. It's trying this. Well, that's not quite working. So let me try this. Oh, pressure. No, let's move here. So like there's this complexity and there's this interesting movement and an adaptation and flow, and it's all needed in some way. It's like a bigger way of looking at it, because it feels hard to say that sometimes when things are very devastating.
Which is where I go, which is what's helpful for me, is I always take it out to the larger context, is like, if it's here, then it's needed. If it's here, it's necessary, because there are no mistakes in the universe. I mean, if it's here in existence, that it must be some sort of agent of change, and
Also to say deep time in that, Monica, because like sometimes we're so myopic in our time, like we're thinking right now this thing, but at the same time, like we have to look at it in that expansive deep time. So this is a moment, like we're living through a historical moment right now, right? And it's one of many that have come before, that have shifted things in the world on small and large levels, and many that will come from this moment onward. What we do with this moment decides a lot for the next bit of time, and then again, and then again, and then there'll be something else that happens that moves us and invites us in another way. So thinking of things in terms of deep time can also be very supportive.
yeah. And it's interesting. Time is it's come up in so many conversations with clients, with, in groups, this idea of time, which I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but that, like, right now, everything feels like it's frozen in time, even though, obviously things are happening, but we're like, it's a pause, and it's, so it's different context, but for some reason it just felt relevant to say. Yes. So in addition to your compassion, is there anything else, that you would see as far as like another layer that you'd like to add about your imagination, or anything that you'd like to leave, because we've got about 5 minutes. I want to honor the time. Anything that you feel in bringing all of this conversation together, and the most important thing that you feel like, or anything that hasn't been, leaving nothing unsaid, what would you like to leave, with the world in regards to, everything that we're experiencing right now?
Yeah, thank you. I feel that this is a really powerful time to be alive. Really powerful, and we are all here right now in this moment, in this crisis slash opportunity, to come together in a new way, to really come together to create whatever it is that we can dream. And I feel like that is something that I want to leave us like feeling into, is that invitation to know that we each have the power to contribute and participate in a new way, something that is not the business as usual mentality, that we came from just a short while ago. That in many ways there's a huge part of the population that's still fighting for that and still operating from that space. Of course, it's not like this, right? It happens in increments, and even after this pandemic, we're going to see like a backlash of movements. But my hope and prayer is that we don't forget. It comes back to the remembering, right? Not only remembering our entire journey and who we are, but remembering what's here in this pause. Remembering what it is that you're sitting with and asking about yourself. Who am I? How am I invited to show up in a new way because of this experience and not in spite of it? What does this moment have to teach me that I can integrate into my being, and breathe out into the world through my actions, right? So awareness and the will to be who we know we need to be in the world. Action is a huge part of it. So I want to just put that and invite all of us into that question. How am I invited to participate in the larger life of the world?
And in that action, remembering that we always have a choice in every way. A choice in how we think, a choice in how we experience this, a choice in what we feel or how we experience our feelings. So just remembering that, especially when we come from that place of awareness, you realize that you do have the choice. And it's an invitation to be sovereign. You don't have to do this the way everybody says you have to do, or the way that it's been done. And going in, as we mentioned, kind of bringing it all together, going into the fear and remembering your courage, so that you get to take that action and you get to exhale into helping us as a humanity exhale into what's next and what the earth is crying for.
And it's okay to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not about not being afraid. It's about having the fear and moving with it anyway, and knowing that we're not alone in this. And that's really important. Like I see all these people and I'm getting all these emails all over, dissolve your fear. And it's like, but fear is really useful. It's like, I'm thinking, there's that Inside Out cartoon, right? In the very, very, very beginning, when you're meeting the emotions, if you guys haven't seen Inside Out, go see it. It's awesome. It's from Pixar and it's so good. But there's that moment in the beginning when fear's like, oh, watch out, and it's like inside the girl's brain saying, watch out. And she's about to trip over electrical wire. So, okay. Fear is useful. So befriend it and, be an ally. Let it be an ally and say, okay, like fear, what do you have to teach me?
Exactly.
What do you have for me here? How can I walk with you and with my courage? And like, come on, let's link arms and let's like make this happen. And it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. Give yourself permission to be honest and be real with it. And don't try to dissolve it so fast that you're using some kind of technique and tool to escape it.
That's not.
Right? With that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Beautiful. Val, this was such a pleasure. This was so beautiful. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful that we got to have this and we got to have this conversation. This has been, so, and it's so funny, not funny, but it's interesting, curious. Like at the end of the program that I took with you, like I was like, we need to do something, help, like I was feeling this urgency every morning. Like I was hearing the earth crying. I was like, it's exactly what I was feeling. Like, Val, we have to do something. Val, we have to do something. Val, and just reminding me that I am doing something, and I don't have to do it all. Which is funny. But that's what this is like, it's hearing the call. hearing the call, and what will we do with it? What will we do with it? So I'm so grateful. So grateful for this. So thank you so much. How can everybody find you?
Oh, thank you. But first, thank you, Monica, too, because I feel very inspired by our conversations, and I think that we bring out the best in each other as we all do. Like whenever we come together with others that are of this passion and of this heart and of this mind, like we magnify our magnificence. So I have so much deep gratitude for who you are and how you show up in the world. So thank you for that. And yeah, come connect. My website is psychospiritualinstitute.com. Psychospiritualinstitute.com, and we invite you to come and connect with us there. Right now we run a 9-month board certified coach training and leadership program. That our next one starts in September. It's an incredibly profound program. Monica actually now teaches in the program with us. So she's on board. So you'll be working with me, with Monica, and with an amazing team of people. It's an incredible deep dive journey. People go through it just for their own personal depth and growth. And then some people come through it and build an incredible business to become a coach, a guide, a speaker. And it's powerful. And right now, I think that our world needs that so much. God, we're moving online with our businesses, and we all need to have an ally in our work. So if that's something that calls to you, please connect with me there. And I'm also on Facebook. So if you're there, if you're tuned in on the Facebook Live or through Monica, you can reach me and connect with me there, Val Silidker. So please stay connected.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful night. Thank you. And catch us on next Tuesday at 6 p.m. But I wanted to add, I do have an interview scheduled, so I'm going to find out the time, but with a research scientist. This is, my curiosity leads me into awesome places, to talk about the biological aspect of the virus, but on a level of biodiversity, on how, so it's like taking what we've talked about here, this is like the greater context, now into more of like still a very evolutionary, still like the purpose of what these viruses do and how ancient they are. I mean, we swam in the primordial seas at the beginning. If you're tuning in now, go back to the beginning, because there's a powerful meditation that we experienced. But it's this conversation with this doctor is bringing us back to the purpose, and that these beings, these these organisms are very necessary and have always been necessary and have been around for ages, and how they're actually helping us evolve. So, again, just kind of seeing this, you mentioned the crisis of perception in your interview. And I feel like this is what I feel like I'm doing, is helping you perceive this from truth.
Yes, amen. That's exactly right. It's like we think it's this environmental crisis, and truly at the heart of it is the crisis of our perception, our relationship to ourselves, to each other, and to our world. So stick with Monica and get involved in these deep conversations. And please feel free, bring tons of questions, because the conversation goes deeper with your support. We're all in it together.
Yes, we are. All right. Thank you so much.